Welcome, everybody, to an extraordinary episode of this program. The president is in Europe at the NATO meeting and is supposed to be holding a press conference any minute now, if and when that begins during our hour together. We'll bring you there, as Musburger would say, live. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, there's a little bit of news. There's a lot of activity on the Hill, lots going on with reconciliation. Abrego Garcia may well be released today, although then taken right back into custody. Is this the president speaking live now? Or that's not live. That's not live. Okay. Moments ago, the White House sent White House reporters a statement from the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission, continuing to debate the question of just how much the U.S. Attack on Iran eradicated their missile and nuclear programs, primarily nuclear programs. The Secretary of State did an interview with Politico this morning, not going quite as far as the president, but headed in the direction of saying it did substantial damage. And that will continue to play out. We're going to talk about NATO. We're going to talk about the president and about Iran in a moment. But because we're waiting on the press conference, which will give us an opportunity to have fresh data, we're going to start with the mayoral campaign in New York City. A huge story for Gotham City, but also a huge story for the Democratic Party and for the Republican Party, because Republicans, including Trump Republican strategists, are delighted at the notion that New York might elect a young socialist mayor. So here's, I think, the best analysis of what happened, because there's lots of cross currents here, including the establishment candidate had a lot of weaknesses in Cuomo. Here's the best analysis from one of the smartest Democratic analysts, David Shore, who tweeted earlier today, or maybe last night, his view of why the underdog, Mr. Mamdani, was able to win. He's a great example of how far you can go if you genuinely center your campaign in an engaging way around the issue the voters overwhelmingly say in surveys they care the most about. No doubt that he's about affordability and quality of life. For many elite New Yorkers, quality of life is, can you go see a Broadway show and not have to step over a homeless person? But for other New Yorkers, quality of life is to be able to afford the basics: housing, education, transportation, and food. Here is one of many videos that Mamdani made during the campaign that gives you an idea of his relentless, humorous, and talented focus on quality of life and costs. Play video, please.
New York is suffering from a crisis, and it's called halalflation. Today, we're going to get to the bottom of this. How much does a plate of halal cost right now from this truck?
$10.
$10.
Chicken over rice, lamb over rice, $10.
$10?
Yeah.
When you're a street vendor, you have to pay for the food, the plates. How much do you have to pay for your permit?
Before it was 22K.
17,000.
How much does a license cost if you get it from the city?
I think 400.
And who are you paying?
The permit owner.
You're not paying the city.
No.
All right.
You pay the permit owner $22,000 just so you can sell this food.
Can you take it down, Paul? It goes on. So let's start with the basic question. Dan, do you accept that, although he won for lots of reasons, that the main reason he won is he talked in a compelling way about the economy, affordability, and quality of life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard from people yesterday when I talked about his kind of generating social media content relentlessly, like, hey, you didn't focus on what he was saying. And you're right. I didn't think we had enough time. And the question was kind of more about mechanics. He did. He focused relentlessly on it. That video is one of many that he did. He met a lot of young people where they were. He energized them. I think the big issue is, and I don't know if we have it to put this map up, is where he won, but also where he didn't. And when the Democratic Party is looking forward now at 2026, 2028, if you know New York City here, so he won in the red. He won in areas, Brooklyn and Queens, kind of along the waterfront, that is home to a lot of young people and kind of younger, young people and high-end kind of progressives, right? He won downtown.
He won white limousine liberals. That's his base.
But hold on. Those blue areas, both in Manhattan, up in the Bronx, which is the north, the kind of Queens on the outer edges down to Brooklyn, Staten Island, are where a lot of working class families with children live. And those are a lot more similar to the outer rings of Las Vegas and Phoenix and Charlotte. And while they're very ethnically diverse, and in places like Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Detroit, where you have a little more kind of black and white working class voters, he did not win. And so this was the Barack Obama issue in 2007. He appealed to the super high-end liberals and young people, and he had to relentlessly work to win over kind of the middle class, working class people. The question now for the general election is, can Mamdani—
Hold on. We'll get to the general election in a second. Hold on. Sorry. Sean, more moderate Democrats who don't want people to panic over this, or the press to say it's a disaster, are saying, don't focus on some of his outlier liberal positions on things like Israel. Focus on the fact that he's talking about original ideas for quality of life. And you could have the moderate Democratic nominees for governor in Virginia and New Jersey, same thing. They're just stylistically different. Do you consider this to be a disaster for Democrats that he won for the reasons that he won? Or do you see that it's possible that this is the beginning of Democrats talking about quality of life with original ideas?
I don't think you can separate the two. I think every Republican tracker, opposition researcher should be putting a camera in every Democrat's face saying, do you stand with the anti-Semitic views and the crazy socialist views of this nut job, and making them answer for it? This should divide the Democratic Party. This guy's a whack job. He's anti-Semitic. And I think that every Democrat, from Chuck Schumer to AOC to the Arizona, every vulnerable Democrat should have to answer for him. If Republicans do this right, and that's an if, then I think that this could be a massive opportunity. But Democrats own this guy now. This is the future. They own socialism, they own anti-Semitism, and they need to explain it.
Okay, so let's talk about the general election. Here is one of the early indications of how the establishment, not necessarily people who endorse Cuomo, but people who stay neutral, will react to their nominee. Here is Hakeem Jeffries on Morning Joe, number 109, please.
I'm wondering, do you consider his win last night in New York City, do you think it provides a roadmap for Democrats running in 2026 on how to energize the base?
I think what's clear is that the relentless focus on affordability had great appeal all across the city of New York. He also clearly outworked, outorganized, and out-communicated the opposition. And when someone is successful in being able to do all three things at the same time, it's usually going to work out for them.
All right, let's talk about the general.
By the way, how this is the only way that these guys can survive is by having people like that in the media give them a pass on this crap. It's unbelievable.
Well, let me just say two more things, and I'll turn it over to you to talk for as long as you want. I said yesterday, I believe, the opposition research that's about to come on this guy is extraordinary. The media did a horrible job, and the Cuomo people did a horrible job of illuminating his record. Okay, so you're about to read stuff he wrote in high school, stuff he's written. He's young, but he's still got a paper trail. And so that's going to be part of the general election, as is the choice of all these Democrats and the question of who's on the general election ballot. So Dan, I'll tee you up and you go any direction you want, but start by responding to me. What's the most likely scenario where he's not the next mayor?
Well, I think it's probably that the Republicans, independents, and moderate Democrats rally around the incumbent, Mayor Adams, that even though he's got a lot of flaws and may be in prison at some point here, well, he was Trump gave him a pardon, but he was on the verge of potentially being
no pardon. They dropped the charges.
They dropped the charges. That they rally around him because on some level crime is down and there's some affordability issues that Mayor Adams has kind of made a dent in. Look, I think one, Sean, he's not a whack. He won, right? So let's tip our cap.
I don't care.
No, but Sean, a lot of people.
No, hold on. Let me just ask this: do you want to own what he said? I can't.
Sean, be specific. We talked to Bill de Blasio about this last night on 289. De Blasio makes a compelling case that a lot of his positions, raising taxes on the wealthy to open supermarkets and food deserts.
That's crazy. I think the anti-Semitic stuff. The policies are full on socialism. I mean,
I hear you. I just want to make sure. I hear you. His politics are not mine, but like I want to be respectful of somebody who runs and wins in a big city. Like, okay, because I see people in the chat saying like,
Dan, hold on, time out. I want to be respectful, but a guy that says what he says about Jews doesn't deserve.
Let me just say, his position on Israel and Jews is going to be much discussed. but I predict he'll moderate on it. Number one. Number two, Sean, I'm not minimizing it, but I want to not use that set of issues to paint him with a broad brush on everything.
But hold on. When it comes to Donald Trump, they make up every lie about the guy when it comes to race and both sides and hoaxes. And when we come to this guy, it's like, well, we can't talk about his
no.
Sean,
we will talk about it. We will talk about it at great length, but I predict he'll moderate on it, number one.
Sean, just like when Trump says outrageous stuff, I don't say he's a whack job, right? I don't.
Plenty do.
Okay, well, that's
yeah,
good for them.
But look, let's just stay. Let's leave aside the question of would he be a good mayor. Let's leave that aside for a moment. Although we'll get to that, assuming the president doesn't start. Dan says Mayor Adams. People rallying around Mayor Adams, not Cuomo, not Sliwa, not some other candidate.
I don't think Cuomo's going to run.
Okay, I don't need.
Okay, so that's. Hold on. Threshold questions.
Hold on. Here's Mayor Adams this morning. Okay, on Fox and Friends, 108, please.
He's a snake oil salesman. He will say and do anything to get elected. Think about this for a moment. He wants to raise 1%. He wants to raise tax on 1% of New York's high-income earners. As the mayor, you don't have the authority to do that.
Yeah.
You know who has the authority to do that? An assemblyman, which he is. He wants to do free buses. He could have done it at assemblyman. He doesn't understand the power of government and how you must making sure you improve your economy, raise the standard of living. And this is what we've done in the city. And I'm looking forward to being on the campaign trail and showing New Yorkers we can't go backwards.
Sean.
So here's the two things I want to ask you guys. One, I don't care whether or not Cuomo's on a ballot or not, like has one of the 87 lines in New York or not. But my question is, my question is, how do you look yourself? I don't fit, like, politically understand how you go, I can fight on the workers line. Like, that's a further embarrassment. And then I think the second question I would ask is, does Curtis Silva have a shot now through a series of bank shots? And no.
He doesn't. But look, the rich people of this city, the elites of this city, are either going to settle on a plan or they're not. And I think the race is on to say, how quickly is the opposition research in the public realm, which I guarantee you, when the full facts about him are widely dispersed, and the New York Times will do a 17-part series, it'll be more favorable, Sean, than you would write it. Are those facts dispersed? But I guarantee you that some number of voters who voted for him last night will not vote for him in the general election if they're given another choice once the facts about him are more commonly known. Hold on, let me just finish. So that's one track. How quickly is that stuff out there? And then the other track is, can the establishment, the rich people of this city, settle on an alternative? Are they for Adams, or do they get Cuomo to go, or do they get someone else in the race? That's, to me, the whole thing. Those two tracks, because I don't think they'll get someone in the race soon enough. And I think he'll consolidate, because I think there'll be pressure on the establishment like Jeffries to endorse him. Dan.
Well, and I think, and I tweeted this yesterday afternoon, that is something that I am watching. Kirsten Gillibrand's the head of the DSCC, the junior senator from New York, Chuck Schumer, who I don't see today how he runs for re-election in a few years. He has got a huge set of problems. And then obviously, Hakeem Jeffries, who now, has got a problem now with AOC, his mayor, and he's trying to hold this together to be the speaker. So I think it is going to be interesting to see what happens. I go back to those working families in the outer parts did not buy what he was selling. And that would concern me if I'm him, because what he's talking about with all of this free stuff, I think they just look at it and say, I don't buy it.
Put up the tweet 107. This is from 5 years ago. And this is the tip of the iceberg, folks. Tip of the iceberg. Now, again, I believe de Blasio is right. He'll moderate. But tell me how you moderate this.
Well, and I don't know how you moderate in the modern era with social media, because I don't think social media will let you moderate. I just don't think you can.
Well, Donald Trump proved that that's not true. This is him saying 5 years ago, what kind of mayor does New York City need right now? And he's highlighting a socialist mayor. Socialist mayor.
By the way, I tweeted this out a little early this morning, but I think the big winner last night was Florida. Yeah. You have more people continue to just say, screw it, I'm out of here. and they're going to move down to law enforcement's going to continue. I talked when I was in New York a couple of weeks ago. I was out with a bunch of New York cops, and they were saying that many of them have a history of law enforcement in their family, and they're like, we're telling all of our kids, don't go into the force anymore, right? I mean, they've already soured on it. This is going to make it worse.
Well, okay. And I said socialist. That mayor has hashtag
Marxist.
communist and Marxist. So last night, Bill de Blasio said, one thing Bill de Blasio did was he brought Mr. Bratton in as his police commissioner.
Yeah.
Last night, Bill said he should keep on the current police commissioner.
Yeah, Jessica Tisch. Yep.
Jessica Tisch. If he does that, some people in the establishment will be calm, and he could do things like that I don't think would offend his base or be inconsistent. But I find it hard to believe he's going to lose the general. I'm not saying he won't. And kudos to Sean. Kudos to Sean for predicting his victory. Sean, congratulations on that. You know New York better than Dan and I do, apparently.
Well, you know what? When you hate the Yankees, you really.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about NATO. And again, we're waiting for the president. This is a remarkable moment, which I don't think most of you have seen. This happened this morning. This is the General Secretary of NATO with Donald Trump, his pal, sitting by his side, announcing something that Donald Trump has put in the public realm for 10 years. It never would have happened without Donald Trump. It is widely supported by tens of millions of Americans. NATO countries paying their fair share. I think this is one of the most remarkable moments of Donald Trump's arc, certainly as it pertains to NATO, which he does not want to destroy, despite what his critics say. Here's the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
For too long, one ally, the United States, carried too much of the burden of that commitment. And that changes today. President Trump, dear Donald, you made this change possible. Your leadership on this has already produced $1 trillion in extra spending from European allies since 2016. And the decisions today will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us.
Sean, that's not AI. That's real. What do you think?
Look, I don't want to get too far out in front, but let's just say I've already got my winner of the week picked out.
Yeah.
This has been, as I said, not just yesterday, but earlier in the year when we talked about NATO. The bottom line is Article 5 is a two-way street. You make, a commitment to your own, by the way, your own national defense in order to show strength on the European continent, and we will all have each other's back. And Spain and Slovakia and our neighbors to the north in Canada have all been like, we'll just make you guys pay the bill. And Donald Trump came on the scene 10 years ago and said, this is a BS deal, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. And piece by piece, he has chipped away, and he's finally getting the recognition he deserves. But the U.S. is not here to be everybody's buddy and pick up the tab every time, whether it's trade or NATO. And I'm glad that he's finally getting a recognition on the world stage for it.
Dan.
Take a victory lap, young man. I mean, he gets Trump deserves. Yeah, he deserves full credit for this. I mean,
knowing how much President Trump just is not, I'll put it this way, is not a fan of traveling, especially overnight to different places. I have a feeling this was the one meeting that he was excited to attend, not in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, he should.
All right. The debate has somewhat shifted over Iran from Democrats' concern about the legality and constitutionality of what the president did and the advisability of doing it, whether it might unleash Iranian reprisals, to the debate over whether intelligence reports suggest it was as effective as the president initially said. Even Marco Rubio this morning in an interview with Politico is clearly hedging on what the president said. Here's Marco Rubio with Politico. 114, please.
But the most important thing here at the end of the day is they have less capacity today than they did just a week ago to rapidly produce a nuclear weapon behind the world's back and threaten the world. And the president deserves a tremendous amount of credit for taking this bold stand. And these pilots did something extraordinary. They flew halfway across.
Less capacity obviously falls far short of what the president said.
A ventilation shaft.
It's not even, and you can take this down.
These pilots didn't.
You can take that down. Less capacity falls far short of what the president originally said. It's not even inconsistent with the intelligence report, the initial intelligence report that the White House attacked as fake news. And now you have, as I said earlier, the United States releasing an Israeli assessment. I'll say some basics. The Israelis are closer to agreeing with President Trump than the American media is. The initial report from one part of the U.S. intelligence community is not as dispositive as the media says it is. It's one initial report from one part of U.S. intelligence. So people shouldn't overstate it, which doesn't mean we know the truth. It's pretty clear the president got ahead of what the United States government knows, but it's also not clear where we actually are. So, Sean, how will this play out? When will we get a U.S. government report, for instance, that's more in line with the president's characterization?
Good question. And everything I'm about to say is through open source intelligence and my own sourcing, not through any of any other official government sources, because I've talked to some folks about this. Number one, most of the intel we have now is satellite-based, satellite imagery. We are not going to get human intelligence, what we call human, on our own. You're not sending in, it's just the Israelis will be the lead on this. They have been the lead for the last decade plus on getting inside and removing centrifuges, getting actual photography, satellite, human signal intelligence, etc. So the intelligence that we will gather on the battle damage assessment going forward will come probably 6 to 12 months from now, largely based on Israeli human intelligence that they gather by sending folks in some additional stuff. I don't think that there's any question that from the satellite imagery, when you drop over a dozen 30,000 ton bombs, that you're going to do significant damage. The question is to what extent, and that's where the debate is right now and should be, whether they're set back 2 years or 20 years. The bottom line is, I think that's where that seems to be, from everyone that I've talked to, where we are. You're going to get a lot more, but it's going to take a lot longer because it's going to be human intelligence that has to go in, get some stuff that's not easy, and it's going to be Israeli based.
Well, given that, I'm saying this rhetorically, going to Dan, if given that, the president probably shouldn't have said what he said. Dan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, I'm not sure it's going to take 6 to 12 months. I think Sean is right. The Israelis have on the ground sources, just like we seem to be able to listen to Vladimir Putin's conversations in real time in his bunker. They seem to be able to listen to the Iranians and others in real time and have great intelligence. I think the big issue now is this verification, because there's the question of, were the facilities destroyed and damaged? The other question is, both the Israelis, the United States, and others believe that Iran, for all those who pointed out I've been mispronouncing it the last 48 years, moved out some of the fuel that they have spun prior to the bombing of Fedoro. So the question is, where is it? How do you verify that it is or is not there? And then what do you do about it? That's the big question. Because if they have this fuel and some of these places that spin it are not destroyed, they could get it back pretty quickly. And I think the Israelis are going to be on the hunt for this.
Most of the intel suggests that you're at about 60% enrichment. You got to get closer to 90 for nukes. So if they get it back, then you got to get back to a facility. I mean, there's no question that it's slowed things down. And as I said a moment ago, the question is, by how long?
Yeah. All right. We could talk more about Iran, but here's what we're going to do. We're continuing to wait for the president's press conference to start. Let's bring some folks in, get some conversation with the community going, and apologize in advance if I interrupt any of you. If we see the president beginning, we'll take that live. Let's start with a man who doesn't reject the label socialist, embraces it proudly, I think. David, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Take your victory lap on your candidate winning last night and tell us what you think it means and what happens next, and ask whatever you want.
Well, much as I would like to just talk about the greatest moment of political joy that I've had since Bernie Sanders won the Nevada primary 5 years ago, I want to talk about, I would like to address this issue that Sean raised about anti-Semitism. I think he used the word anti-Semitism about 6 or 7 times already, and it's only day one.
David, get used to it, David.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, it's going to be 4 months of this.
David, I know you live in Brooklyn, but tell people like what neighborhood in Brooklyn.
I live in Bed-Stuy, which went by Mamdani over Cuomo by 43 points.
Yeah.
And Bushwick next to me, 88% in Bushwick.
Yeah.
88% Mamdani.
David,
Yeah.
before you tee off on my critique, can you just give me the 30-second elevator speech? Why are you excited that he's your nominee or not? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like if somebody called you today and said, hey, I'm moving to New York, I'm going to vote in the general. Should I vote for this guy? Why not? Give me the 30-second pitch.
I can do it shorter than that, David.
No, but I want to hear David.
I know, but it's an $8 chicken and rice. David.
You know what? I'll give you the mildest version of it instead of the fire breathing version. The mildest version is just, oh, look at this. We have a candidate who's actually going to be discussing the real issues that affect New Yorkers in this campaign instead of, a lot of other nonsense. He's going to be discussing the one thing that everyone is worried about, which is how the hell do they live in a city where the rent is going up, childcare is is unbelievably expensive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now,
Yeah.
I didn't say he has answers. I didn't say I even agree with all of his answers. But now we have a conversation.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Now we're talking about the reality. It's the same. Look, I believe I do want to get to the anti-Semitism question, but I believe that the political class in this country was shocked and stunned and disgusted when Trump won in 2016, and once again when he won in 2024. They couldn't believe it. Oh my God, what is going on? This is unheard of. This is impossible. This can't happen. Same reaction today. Why? Because they don't understand how dissatisfied people are out there. Not just as in New York City, just as everywhere else.
Thank you, sir. You're speaking truth.
But as far as anti-Semitism, I just want to say one thing. The highest ranking Jewish official in New York is Brad Lander. He's a controller. Nobody paid any attention to him until he started this race, and they didn't pay much attention to him during the race either. And he cross-endorsed with Zoran. He not only campaigned with Zoran, he went to Zoran's headquarters last night and congratulated him on his victory. And he said, this is our nominee, and he's going to stand with him. So if the highest ranking Jewish official in New York City is willing to stand with Zoran, I'm willing to stand with Brad. And
didn't he criticize him for some? Didn't he criticize him for some of his statements like 4 days ago?
Yeah, I think he did. I think he said he went too far on certain things.
Yeah.
Everyone can say that about everybody, including Trump. But
David, I'll ask you to speak for yourself and hopefully at least a little bit for your whole neighborhood. If he does what Bill de Blasio predicts and moderates on some issues, is that all good with you?
Oh, absolutely. But I don't actually expect him to change, maybe communication a bit, but I don't expect him to change any basic positions.
Yeah. And are you concerned about his lack of experience?
A bit, yeah. Yeah, I think he needs to bring in some people with more experience.
If he brought in more moderate people?
What was Eric Adams' experience when he came into office?
Well, he had been police.
Brooklyn Borough president is not a real office.
But he had been in the police in an era when crime and public safety was a big issue. So he did.
Right. But as far as
you've obviously never been to Coney Island with the Brooklyn Borough president. It's an important job for promoting Nathan's and other things. David, congratulations. You were early on to see that he would likely win, and I think the way you enunciated the reason he won is as good as I've heard from anybody. So thank you.
By the way, can I just one point to try to be forward looking? Dan's brought this up, and so just to combine some of the Dan points, because I think this is a little bit more of an issue on the Dem side now, but I don't think it's going to be limited to the Democrat side. I think that much as the Bernie Sanders wing kind of elevated in the Trump side on the Republican side, this is a transcendent issue in both parties. Young, active, social media savvy is the name of the game going forward. And I think that both, if people ask me all the time when I'm out at events, like, how do I be more like Trump? My answer is don't. Be yourself, be authentic, but embrace technology. Go where the people, I mean, Dan says this all the time, go where the people are. Like what he did, and that video you played at the beginning that I sort of hadn't seen before is great, right? It's him at a food truck. Like, I wish you would go to Nuts for Nuts, by the way. That's the only one that I ever go to in New York City. I'm a big fan of Nuts for Nuts because the prices on the almonds continue to go up. And but I think that, like, that's politically speaking, when you start to look at this, and you, by the way, we didn't cover it because it didn't rise to the level of the House Oversight Committee had its ranking member race yesterday. And again, another young whippersnapper defeated Kwesi Mfume and oh my God,
and Lynch from
Stephen Lynch from Massachusetts. And this is just going to be, I get that the Dems are having their moment now, but I don't think it's limited to them.
Yeah.
As we move forward, this is the new name of the game.
Yeah, I would tell everyone running for office or managing a campaign, show your candidate the $8 chicken over rice video and ask them to make it. Ask them to make it, because it's not so easy. What he does, what his talent is not something that everybody has. Michelle, how do you feel about the government opening supermarkets in food deserts?
I mean, I'm pretty far removed from New York City, but
where are you?
I'm in Central Virginia. Now, I've been in New York City a handful of times. I love the city. It's not somewhere I want to live. Happy where I'm at now, but as an American, New York City is it's just such a shining, beautiful example of kind of the power, the kind of financial capital of the world. It's a really important part of, I think, our American culture, is that city is well taken care of, that the people, that live there are happy and can be supported and living their daily lives. And so, I'm pretty dismayed, as much as I could be down in Virginia. It doesn't affect me directly, but I was really, really dismayed to kind of hear that he won this primary. And I know the game's not over necessarily, but it is problematic. And I guess I have two specific questions for kind of anybody. Number one is, and I totally agree, Sean, you kind of talked about the social media piece. So that was something I was going to touch on. But Eric Adams, if he's smart, he needs to get, a lot of young whippersnappers and get an aggressive TikTok social media campaign going today in order to have a chance. So that's kind of one point. But do you foresee a coalition of moderates, of working class Dems, even MAGA and Republicans sort of coalescing around Eric Adams just to kind of, support him as a candidate? And, what do you see in terms of that potential infrastructure? And then my second question is, AOC is sort of the voice of the Democratic Party. She's aggressively hitched her wagon to this candidate. I just saw a post this morning congratulating him. What do you see in terms of her political future, and really the political future of the Democratic Party? Because there's a lot of crossover here between this candidate, this election, and how AOC is viewed as sort of an informal leader of the Democratic Party.
Dan.
It's a great set of questions that I am very curious to see the answers here play out, because I said this earlier. I think her endorsement was huge for him. It boosted him. Sean talks about momentum. It just accelerated it even more down the home stretch. What you did not see was Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. They were all silent. And so I think you're right. She has a lot on the line now to try to push him over. It's an issue. You saw Hakeem Jeffries kind of try to tap dance on Morning Joe this morning to answer this question. I think, there's a reason Adams was on Fox News, right? He knows who those viewers are. And I'll be curious. I said this before. The question now is, can he win over either ethnic working class kind of families on the outer edges of the boroughs, and also kind of he lost the Upper West Side, by the way, which is one of the most progressive parts of New York City, but it's with older families, older Jewish people. Who did Barack Obama struggle with? Older voters and kind of working class voters that it took him, he had to really work to try to get them comfortable with them. So it's an interesting thing for the party. It's really hard. One of Trump's geniuses, he could get MAGA, working class, and Wall Street and Silicon Valley and suburban people to all coexist. That takes political talent, and we're going to see if Mamdani has it.
So I'll answer this from the Republican side. I'm not, as you guys know, aside from predicting New York mayoral races on the Dem side, I don't have a ton of insight, but I'll say two things. One, I totally agree with you, Michelle. I'm not a New Yorker. I don't like any of their teams with a passion, but I love going to New York. There's something very iconic and American about being in Times Square. I just did Fleet Week, and it's majestic. There's a reason that it inspires so many people. There's iconic nature of so many of its landmarks, from its churches to skyscrapers and building. I mean, it's just, there's something so American, and there's a reason. I mean, the Statue of Liberty, of people who are from a foreign country want to go to New York because there's a symbol of it. When you walk the streets of New York, there's just something that I'm with you. I like visiting, maybe for 24 hours and then going, but you want a New York that we can all be proud of. And that's what worries me with this guy. On the MAGA front, I will say there's two people that I see as critical, and in this order. The first is Rupert Murdoch. Adams was on, as we noted, Fox and Friends. How much does the Murdoch empire, if you will, their newspapers, their television, and other media accounts push people, give Adams a platform to get to the second point, which is Donald Trump? If Donald Trump gets out there and says, "I'm sorry, Curtis, we're going to get behind Adams," I think that is a game changer. But in that order, I think that's how this thing is going to play out. I think Murdoch gives Adams the platform, or doesn't. I mean, I don't know where they are. I'm just saying, if Murdoch cares enough, Mark was mentioning the illiterati in New York, and I think that if Murdoch is one of those leaders, then it's up to him to decide, do I give Adams a platform to help convince Trump and the MAGA faithful that this is the best bet and this is the check against full-on socialism? Then I think that would be my play.
Do you think that would be helpful, though? Because, we saw the Trump trials and everything. I mean, Manhattan and New York City is like majority Democrat. Do you think that getting Trump involved actually would?
Well, look, Curtis got like north of 21, 20 something, somewhere in there, low 20s. I think if you can siphon off some stuff, take Adams' natural support, I mean, and consider how many other people are still in this jungle of a general election in terms of the rate. And if they can siphon off 5 or 6% to some of these other people that might stay on the ballot, this goes back to the point, does Cuomo stay in or not? I can't imagine he does, but who knows? But I think that that's the only mathematical scenario where I can see something happening, but that's my take.
If Trump endorsed Adams, it would be a huge problem. I mean, now if you're Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, all these people, are you with Trump? Or are you with
AOC?
That is, now he may do it to mess with them just to do that. But that would be a big time problem for the Democrats.
I think that's the play. The question for Trump's team is, who's the devil that you want?
Well, Adams will do whatever they want. They drop the
charge. Yeah, but there's something, look, I mean, as I said, there's something to be said about this guy. Like, you elect Mamdani, and then you go, okay, this is who the Democrats own now, right? Yep. There is something to be said
Mark
for
is muted,
having a foil.
Who are the two entities doing the most aggressive opposition research against Mamdani today, Dan?
Ooh, I might have said the DNC.
Actually, do they have the money?
Maybe AIPAC. And
AIPAC,
you know what?
AIPAC and the RNC is the correct answer.
Well, you know what? I also wonder where the unions are. I'll be curious. I don't know if they'll love some of what he's talking about. They might.
I'd be interested if it was look, I'll tell you, I oversaw for 6 years the whole research division. We never did research like that before. I mean, that would have to be Trump directed. So James Blair would have to decide if that was something that they wanted to do.
Why wouldn't they?
Why? Because it costs money, and it's
just some Google. The guy is so susceptible to Google. The New York Press Corps, it's a failure on
what I'm saying is, I guess the point is, what are you doing it for? If you're gonna go in for Adams, then yeah, but if you're
Well, and here's another question. If you're trying to get Elise Stefanik elected, Kathy Hochul has to suddenly deal with this guy,
right?
Because so much like New York taxes and other things have to go through the state legislature.
Yesterday, her reaction last night was along the lines of what a lot of Democrats are saying, which is, focus on quality of life and real lives of real people. All right, the president is still not started, but he might begin at any minute. So again, we're going to break format just a little bit. There are, by my count, 3 two-ways on today. Two-way tonight is on at 6, but at noon, before then, Meghan McCain is on. And Megan needs to turn her camera on. There it is. Megan, welcome in. Thank you for joining. We're grateful to you for making time. We're very excited about your interview. We've been touting it all week. And before you say a word about it, let's play for everybody a little bit of Megan's interview with Usha Vance.
How do you and the vice president have a date night that feels normal, if that's even possible? And do you have a go-to of you're like, okay, we have a night off. I can do whatever I want. We have a babysitter. What's your ideal date night?
Well, it kind of depends on where we are. In Cincinnati, we have all of our go-to places. And so that's really easy. There are restaurants we like. There are walks that we love to take. We love to go kayaking or canoeing. So that's another thing that we actually did that for Father's Day. But we also do that just the two of us. So in Cincinnati, we have a good sense of normalcy, and our date nights are just basically anywhere where we can be without sort of being spotted. And we try to kind of disguise ourselves a little bit and make that a little easier.
Has anyone given you any advice, other political figures, on, just to have that kind of normalcy so you guys can have a date alone or, have some semblance of privacy?
Does anyone give us advice on that front? Someone did tell JD to wear a hat. And that it would cut down on the number of people who recognized him dramatically, which is 100% true.
Okay.
So
I didn't even,
that's been a really helpful tip. It means that we can go do things with our kids and get out, even like I said, even take the dog for a walk, just the two of us, and be able to talk without people constantly noticing. And that sense of being anonymous in public is honestly the best of all dates for us.
All right, the interview runs about an hour. It's incredibly revealing about her. That's just one of many of the things she shares. So Megan, tell us what people will learn if they join you at noon today for the special edition of Citizen McCain.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, obviously, on the morning meeting. I was so honestly thrilled when Mrs. Vance, she did ask me to call her Usha, so I'll say Usha said yes to me interviewing her. This is the first time she sat down for a long form interview. She's done sort of short things when Vice President Vance was running for vice president. And then she did something recently about her summer reading program that she's doing for children. But I had just been really curious about her, and I had really wanted to know more about her life and just the public person, the private person behind the public person. And we sat down for an hour and she answered every single question I wanted. And I just want to thank 2A for the opportunity too. And the idea for all of this actually came from, I know 2A's incarnation is so much about what the media is doing wrong. We are using to our benefit. And for me, when my parents were in public office and when my dad was running for office, the media still did personal profiles and they did lifestyle profiles of political figures. And now our media is just so divided and so vitriolic that they can't see particularly conservative women in a light that's in any way humanizing. So their loss is my gain. And I'm really excited about this interview. And we have, as Mark, some really interesting women coming up that are potentially going to be able to sit down too, which I'm really excited about. And it's just, I really loved Usha, and I think America's going to really see a different side to her. And, I think there's a really high likelihood she's going to be our next first lady.
Yeah. Dan, question for Megan.
What was the most insightful or fascinating thing that you learned about her?
She was very candid about being new to this, that, she's only been second lady for 6 months, and, she's very much a normal person, living a very normal life up until just her husband ran for Senate in the very recent past. When I got to go to the Naval Observatory where the vice president lives to do the interview, and their dogs were running around, their children were running around. There's a playground outside. Her little girl came in looking for some games in the closet that I was standing near. It's like very much a real house with real
Yeah.
people. And that, I don't know why that surprised me, but their house kind of sounded like mine. And I think America hasn't had in a really long time a family, like a young family. We've had, much older presidents. And obviously with Biden, it was much, much older. And even for me, I'm the same age as the vice president, which is so weird. It's just been so refreshing to have like people that I can really relate to. And she was just very warm and very open and very easy to interview. And I hope people like it.
Sean.
I mean, it's fair to say probably the Kennedys were the last to have young children because the Obama girls were in their middle school when they came in, I think, because they were going to college at the end. So that's
They said that the Gore family had kids, but same thing, they were teenagers.
Yeah, exactly.
Sean.
What does she do or want to do? Right. I mean, and what I mean by that is we're 6 months in. She's gone to some events or whatever. Has she got a platform? Does she want to be involved in some cause? Is she doing it, but not, I mean, to your point about the interviews, is she been doing stuff and just not getting attention? Like, what is it that she wants to say she was involved with or accomplished at the end of the 4 years?
So right now she's focusing on literacy with her summer reading challenge, which I'm doing with my kids, which is a challenge to have kids read 4 books a month. And then you can like sign up for this raffle and possibly get invited to the vice president's house with her. So literacy is definitely.
What if your kids only read 1 book a year? Could they something?
Well, I asked, it can be like a children's book because I was like, my kids aren't like,
But a pamphlet.
Yeah. I think what was also interesting is they're a no screen family. And I use tablets with my kids when we travel and in like, emergency situations, and we try and keep them off screens as much as possible, but sometimes you just can't. And I was really impressed by that. But I think she's really growing into it. And I think, just from my hour with her, I think she's acutely aware of how popular Vice President Vance is, that he's the rising star of the party. They seem very much in love, very much like partners, which again, not to be gauche, but sometimes that's not the vibe you get from political families and political partnerships. I'm not trying to be unkind, but sometimes you're like,
that's a nice way of saying it.
Seems more like a partnership than a love story. They seem very much in love, very much supportive of one another. And like they're complete teammates. And I think we're going to see more of her. I think
she want to champion issues. I mean, you mentioned that like, Mrs. Trump is got her be best, but doesn't really want to, does she want to be involved?
I think she does. And I think she's growing into it. And we actually discussed in the interview, I don't want to give too much away, but the pressure of being the first South Asian second lady and also raising children in a multi-faith family and just being a millennial. I do think she's growing into it. I do think we're going to be seeing a lot more of her. I do know they've just been judicious about the press that they choose to speak to, which I completely understand because as you know better than anybody, Sean, people are just so hostile to conservatives. And like I said, their loss is two ways gain and our gain. But it's really when my dad was running for president, like it wasn't like the Today Show would do a profile on my mother. And now it's just not something that's ever going to happen again. But America deserves to know our politicians and their families as people because they're representing us in a lot of different ways. And like I said, I'm just really happy that my career can benefit from, the Today Show being so gross to people. And that's an example. I meant all shows, not just them.
Let me tell you the confluence here that I think is so important to focus on. First ladies and second ladies rarely do hour-long interviews with taking all questions. It just doesn't happen very often. 2, this is a very unknown person. And I found it spellbinding. She's brilliant. I mean, she's a brilliant person, an accomplished person, but I found it spellbinding to hear her talk for an hour. I barely knew what her voice sounded like, except for the convention. And then 3 is she's an incredibly influential and important person in this country. And as Megan said, like, we should know all the influential and important people. So unfurls at noon on YouTube on Megan's channel. I strongly recommend you watch it, whether you watch it when it debuts at noon or later in the day or tomorrow. It's an incredibly interesting interview. And again, really revealing. And we're all grateful to Megan for getting it, but grateful to the First Lady's office for making her available for this. Second lady, sorry.
Not yet. She will be First Lady, but just
I
think she will be First Lady too. I think she's well on her way.
Megan, feel free to stay with us. One more show I want to take.
Say one thing.
Of course.
Sean's not the only one that told you Mom Donnie was going to win. I think you're how Megan did too.
That's true. You did.
Sorry.
Megan's been texting me for like
By the way,
2 months.
it's funny that the Republicans are the ones that call this.
Yeah, Megan's been texting me for 2 months, telling me, yeah. It's
and
true.
I know all these people I know from college who are sort of like, the classic limousine self-loathing liberals are obsessed with him. And Cuomo's such a pig. I mean, no offense, but I mean, he's such a weak candidate on so many different levels, and he's just a gross person. I thought in the debate when Mom Donnie was like, I've never been accused of, when he was going down the roster of all his, I've never killed old people. Like and I was just like, wow. I mean, talk about really not. And I do think the era of sorry, I could talk forever, as you know. I'll stop talking.
No. Just dip into Fox for a minute, please.
Freeze the rent, city-run grocery stores, $70 billion.
Nope, lost it there. Anyway, Curtis is on. We'll watch that.
$30 minimum wage. A few more not on this list here. Defund NYPD, defund prisons, defund medical bills, and get rid of private insurance. Your thoughts?
But in typical political fashion, do as I say, not as I do. He claims he's under threat, right? So who's protecting him now? Off-duty NYPD armed officers. Who does he want protecting New Yorkers? Social workers. Yeah. Hey, Mandami, do what you suggest everybody do. Why isn't he being protected by social workers? I'm a guy who was shot 5 times by the Gattis and Gambinos in 1992. I travel by myself. I'm in the streets. I'm in the subways. I'm the people's mayor. You have to have a feel. I hate to break the baby boomers' bubble, because I'm a baby boomer. The millennials are the majority now. Do the analytics. You must get millennials on your side to win elections.
Okay. Enough of Curtis.
Young people
I got to say just one thing. And I want to say,
that's Sean's candidate.
Yeah, go ahead.
He used to live down the street from us on the Upper West Side, like literally a couple of doors down. I'd see him every day. He would hang out at this local bodega, get his coffee, his breakfast sandwich, and sit there. He will talk to anybody at any time about any.
He will. That's Sean's candidate. Later tonight on Two-Way Tonight, 6 o'clock. And again, we're still waiting for the president, so that's filling a little bit here.
He's waiting for us.
2 of Dan's colleagues from the group chat, Emma Jo Morris and Nina Turner, will join me to talk about the day's news. And then tonight at 7 o'clock, Bridget Fedesi is on Real America. Here is Bridget, not live, although I'll do it like a fake thing. Bridget tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Bridget, what do you have for us?
What do you love about this great country of ours? Do you have a story you'd like to share that makes you proud to be an American, or about an American hero, or just the kindness of an American, or just something uniquely American that makes your heart glow? Join me, Bridget Fedesi, on my show Real America, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. We will be live discussing this. You can register to join the conversation at twoway.tv/BridgetZoom, or you can simply watch the episode at Real America Fedesi on YouTube.
Sean, what's making you feel patriotic lately?
Well, a lot. But tonight, Ron Johnson's joining the show, and he's got receipts. Senator Johnson's got a new report out on the fiscal situation in America, the deficits, how the big, beautiful bill scores, both in terms of CBO, joint tax, and kind of where the hurdles are. The Senate, John Thune talked yesterday, he wants to go into a vote-a-thon this weekend and still try to pull this thing out and then jam the House, as we talked about yesterday. I just don't see the math. I don't see how they've got math issues on the bill. They've got math issues in the Senate, and then they got math issues in the House. and Ron Johnson's going to talk tonight, because if you can't get Ron Johnson on board, I think you can alleviate the Josh Hawley problem. You got a Tom Tillis problem, a Susan Collins problem, a Lisa Murkowski problem.
Mitch McConnell, you think, or no, with the Medicaid?
I think McConnell gets back on board. He's not voting against this. It's too big of a deal, but he may not go easy, but he's on board. But just those alone, never mind a couple of the other outliers, they got a math problem. This is going to be an issue.
They also put up 115, please. They also have a House problem.
Well,
because we talked yesterday about the likelihood that the Senate now is going to try to roll the House by jamming the House of Lords version of the bill down their throats. House conservatives warn, New York Times says they can't back Senate bill to enact Trump's agenda. I really now believe that if the Senate thinks they're going to jam the House, they need to come up with a plan B, even though I think it's the most likely outcome.
Or a plan
it's not
C.
A sure thing. Yeah.
What about a plan C?
No, there's no conference committee, Sean. It doesn't exist.
I didn't say conference committee. I said conference.
I know. Megan, what's making you feel patriotic lately?
Oh, I am always so patriotic. I'm in northern Arizona and we're getting ready for the 4th of July coming up. You can probably see like the flag right there, whatever. I don't know. I'm feeling really, I'm really feeling very patriotic right now in general. And I think, as weird as it sounds, like Republicans are just so strong right now on so many different levels. And even seeing Mamdani's win, I tweeted this morning, like, yes, make him the nominee in 2028. I mean, he's not American born, so he can't be, but like definitely run this person, run like a socialist extremist who wants the government to run grocery stores, and like run this person, because we all know normal, rational Americans are not going to vote for that. The vast majority of Americans are not going to vote for that. And so, just being a little tribal.
Yeah.
Dan,
sorry,
Dan, I love you. It's rough being Dan right now.
Dan, doesn't New Hampshire run its liquor stores? Doesn't the state run liquor stores?
I know they're on the border.
Yes, the answer is
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, go up 89 or 93, which
So,
I may or may not have done as a kid a lot.
Megan, why is it okay for New Hampshire to run liquor stores, but New York City can't run supermarkets?
Well,
Virginia runs them too, by the way.
Okay, I knew other states. Yeah. So why is it okay?
It's a bad idea.
Why is it okay for the government to run liquor stores? And that's not socialism. Do you think people in New Hampshire consider their liquor distribution to be socialist?
I think people of New Hampshire, I mean, it's a live free or die state.
Like, no, but it's not just New Hampshire. People are putting in the chat. Pennsylvania, North Carolina. The government sells liquor. Why can't it sell? Why can't it sell fruits and vegetables? Well, but Sean, you say they shouldn't, Sean. But I don't hear people saying that Pennsylvania and North Carolina are socialist states because the government sells liquor.
Well, he's part of the Socialist Party. He's like defining himself as a socialist. I'm not putting that on him. He's part of the Democrat Socialist.
Well, but I'm more interested in not in labels, but in whether the policies are good.
I also think there's a big difference between.
There's also a difference between purchasing liquor to resell it and running a full-fledged grocery store. In my opinion,
no, they're selling retail. They're not selling it to resell. They're selling retail.
For retail. I get it. But I mean, you buy a thing of beer and you put it out. You're not buying produce and chicken and sourcing like all these different things that look, they're in bottles.
People are buying a 6-pack.
Like New York City can't run
that's
anything.
what I'm saying.
They can't run cabs. They can't run. I lived in New York for almost 16 years. The subways are a mess. If you ever try and go to the post office in New York, like good luck with that. Like they can't even.
Who goes to the post office?
I do, because some stuff you have to return at the USPS. You just have to. Like I go to the one. I won't say where it is. Like probably once a week. And Megan's right. Look,
by the way, can I just, since we're on a soapbox, I'm going to tell you about the state of Rhode Island just passed what they're calling the Taylor Swift tax. You want to talk about a communist state? Rhode Island is now as close to communism as you can come. They're trying to figure out literally every way that they can tax people. And the Taylor Swift tax, which I get that they think, that they're going after Taylor Swift and her beautiful house here, but it's going to affect a lot of other people.
All right, we got to stop because two things. One, it's 10 o'clock and I got to go do some reconnaissance. Two, everybody needs to take a 2-hour nap. Set your alarm to wake up at noon to watch Megan's interview. And the president is exactly an hour late getting going. So flip over to cable and watch it. Grateful to Megan and look forward to her interview. I'll see you at 6. Sean will see you at 6. Bridget will see you at 7. And go watch the president cable. And of course, we'll be back in 23 hours. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Go, Megan.